Before the video begins, guys, I want to say a special thank you to Mortis Media. We will be featuring Ouija board stories on today's collaboration video. I want to thank him for all of his hard work, and it's been a real pleasure working with you. And make sure after the video is over, guys, go to Mortis Media's channel and make sure to subscribe. I know he's doing huge things already, and it's been really nice and refreshing to work with someone like him. I'll have the link to his channel in the description box below. Let's begin. Here's a paranormal true story, told to me many times by my mother. When my mom was a teen, she went to a friend's house for a sleepover. We'll call her Ashley. It was her and 3 other girls. Ashley's parents were out for the night, but were recording a movie on the TV in the living room, so the girls stayed in Ashley's room. One of the other girls, who we will call Sarah, is pretty dark and thought it would be fun to bring a Ouija board. My mom had had a previously shocking Ouija board experience, but clearly hadn't learned her lesson. So the girls are pushing the dial around, of course convinced the entire time the others were pushing it. Finally, they got a spirit. After asking it stupid questions, they went to asking the typical questions like, "Can you prove you're here?" After a while, it finally agreed, and the TV in the other room went out. This was in the 80s, so it's one of those old TV boxes, the kind where when you turn it on, the picture starts as a small dot in the middle of the screen, and then quickly fills the entire space. Well, when the TV came back on, it literally looked like someone was pushing the picture in from the side. They all freaked out because this is definitely not normal. Luckily, some guy friends stopped over at this time and dragged them out to go to the mall. The girls told them what happened, and they of course didn't believe them. Finally, they got back to Ashley's house, and they wanted to prove that they were telling the truth. Remember the movie that was recording? This was the same movie playing in Ashley's room, so they checked the recording to see if the screen was also pushed in from the side. Maybe it was a glitch from the program. No, it wasn't. They went back to Ashley's room, tried to get the spirit from earlier to show the guys they were telling the truth. They finally got it and would ask it to show itself. They'd ask if it could do the TV trick again. It would reply, yes. They asked if it would do it. Answer, no. The questions continued this way until they got impatient and finally asked, "Then what will you do to prove you're here?" It started spelling K-I-L. My mom realized what it was trying to spell, threw the board over before it could finish. She knew that if it finished spelling the word kill, it would indeed fulfill its promise. The girls freaked out again and gave the board to the guys to get rid of it. They didn't believe in the board anyways, so the guys took the board and left. The girls decided they should relax and go to sleep. They lay down in Ashley's room and turned the lights out. Everything's quiet, and they're almost asleep when all of a sudden, the lights turn on. The girls are frozen and just look at each other. They try to come up with an explanation, and Sarah turns the lights back off. A couple minutes after Sarah lays back down, the lights pop on again. They debate on if they should turn the light off again or just stay up. They decide to stay up and talk and play other games to get their mind off what had just happened. Just as they finally got their minds off of it, the lights go out. They all scream and Sarah jumps up immediately to turn the light on. Again, a few minutes later, it goes out again. The girls all together this time go to turn the light on. They try to get their minds off it again when the light goes out a 3rd time. That was it. They were not going to be able to stay. They called the guys from earlier and went out to party the rest of the night. Sleep was not happening that night. Whenever my mom tells this story, she's just so thankful nothing worse happened. She truly believes that the spirit they contacted could just have easily locked the house up and kept them from going out, only imagining what could have happened. To this day, she still lays in bed sometimes, wondering what she would do if the lights just turned on or off. To make it even worse, Once when I was in high school, we were both laying in her bed each, reading our own books. She had one of those lamps on that, when you touch it, it gets brighter and brighter, and has about 3 settings before going off again. Anyways, so we're laying there reading when all of a sudden the light flickers. This grabs our attention. Next, the light turns off back on the brightest setting, then goes down through the settings, only not from the lowest to the highest. It went backwards. It can't do that. Finally, after going backwards through the settings, it stops on the setting it was originally on. Me and my mom just look at each other, and at the same time, we suggested going out for dinner. It hasn't happened again since then, and the lamp never had any further instances. Gives me chills to this day. Although I didn't personally experience the original occurrence, I too lay in bed and am frightened over the thought that the light might just switch off.
This story was back when I was a child. It was around 1996, and we had almost nothing to do in the little town we lived in. My mother had been working on me using a Ouija board, and the do's and don'ts with it. I was happy, seeing as I was only 9 or 10 years old at the time. It was about this time that the school we went to held an overnight movie campout. It was a 24-hour lockdown in the school, and it was the first time I got to go. My older sister was there as well, but did not stay close to me most of the time. Around 8 or 9 p.m, one of my friends pulls me out to the main hall, and we ran to the 5th grade stairway. There was a little place to sit under the stairs. As we got there, 2 other girls were smiling, and I saw a bunch of candles lit. They had a Ouija board there, and they wanted to see if the school was haunted or not. The first thing I could think of was to talk them out of it. They told me not to be a baby, and I eventually stopped talking and did what I needed to do. I walked away and went to get my older sister. It was the better call to make, and as my sister got there, the planchette started moving on its own. She just slammed her hand down and pulled it to goodbye. It didn't move after that, and she yelled at them and told them to go back to the gym. The very next day, my mother, my sister, and myself put the board in a black bag and threw it in a 10-foot hole. The girls had opened a gate and let something in. That school now stands unused. It was out of code in 2003, and my auntie told me that things have been seen in it, and it will never be the same again.
I've always been infatuated with the idea of ghosts and the paranormal. For as long as I can remember, I was always watching all of the ghost hunting or Bigfoot hunting shows. I wanted to be a ghost hunter when I grew up, but my opinions quickly changed after the span of 1 week. I had a school project in my world geography class to map out all of the Indian tribes' territory in the U.S. I found out that I lived in a past territory of the Apache tribe, which I partly expected because I am 1/4 Apache. I kept researching the Apache after the project had ended and learned all that I could about the tribe. I learned that the Apache also believe in ghosts and the afterlife, as do I. Being the stupid little 11-year-old I was, I decided to steal my father's Ouija board to see if there were any lingering spirits in my house. I decided to speak to ghosts on the Saturday of the week I stole the board. That night came quickly, and I was excited to see if I could find any ghosts that would be willing to talk to me and tell them about my tribe. I set up the board, lit candles around myself, and turned off the lights in my room. I was ready. I asked, "Is there anyone here?" To my shock, I was signed, "Hello." I was ecstatic someone was with me. I asked if they were Apache. They said yes, and told me his name was Delshay. the name for a warrior and a chief. I was asking questions all night up until when he gave me a very, very bone-chilling answer that didn't relate to the question I asked. He asked me, "Can you help me?" Of course I happily obliged to his question. He then told me to put up my board, saying there were other spirits coming. "Don't say goodbye," he said. I remember I was a little confused as to why I would have to say goodbye in the first place, but I had done what he said. The week that followed was the scariest week of my life. The next Tuesday, as I was doing my math homework, I heard a knock coming from the inside of my closet. I laughed and told my brother to get out. He came out of his room and opened my door leading into my room and said, "I didn't knock." I didn't think much of the incident. We lived in a pretty run-down house at the time. Throughout the week, more strange things began to happen. Doors would slam in the middle of the night, cabinets would open and close, and some things would seemingly disappear without a trace, later to be found in the place we checked first. Throughout the week, more strange things began to happen. Doors would slam in the middle of the night, cabinets would open and close, and some things would seemingly disappear without a trace, later to be found in the same place we checked first. I was starting to get worried that not saying goodbye to Delche was a bad idea. I got back out of my father's Ouija board and searched for Delche, but I couldn't get an answer back from him. I knew then in that moment that I had helped Delche escape from the spirit realm and come back to haunt my house. I told my brother what happened, and he decided that we need to signal Delche and let him pass to the other side. We turned off all the lights in my room, lit candles, and looking to see if we could get a hold of him. We copied everything the ghost hunters did. We started the recorder and started talking. We asked all the questions that the hunters did. "If you are here, give us a sign," my brother had said. Then something absolutely terrifying happened. My closet door opened, slowly, very slowly, as the hinges squeaked. I was frozen in fear, and I assumed my brother was as well. We sat in silence for at least 10 minutes before we heard something. It was a faded whisper. Delche said Dahil, the Apache word for dark. My brother and I were shocked. We quickly cleared everything in my room and ran to my parents' room to tell them what had happened. My parents believed in ghosts just as much as I did. We showed them the tape of the door opening and Delche's comment. We were already planning on moving from the rundown home, so this just added to the list of reasons of wanting to move from the now haunted house. I don't know what happened to the house or Delche, but I can tell you this for certain. Don't forget to say goodbye.
This story happened to me about a year ago. My mother-in-law had come down for a little while and was visiting the state of Washington for the first time. In between our outings, we went to a New Age store where I bought a Ouija board. It was a really nice looking one, and as we were testing it, it called me by my pagan name, and it was at that point that I knew I needed it. After we got home, I asked it something that had been bugging me for over 2 years now. What happened to my first Ouija board? The planchet spelled out one name, Mystic. I was not too happy, for he had been an old roommate of mine and was currently in jail, so I had to call his sister to try and track it down. As she spoke to me, she told me that she had seen it at his girlfriend's house, but that something had happened to it. First, it is important that you understand that this board was not your average item. It was very expensive and had a glass top with runes cut into the glass along the sides. Anyway, when his girlfriend was transporting it in her car, she didn't secure it properly, and the whole glass cover shattered. Then, after she put it over a fireplace, she'd come to see a man with red hair, green eyes, and what she called medieval looking clothing. he vanished from sight, and consequently the board was burned to ash. I was upset, but could not help but smile after hearing this. All of that went on 2 weeks before I got my new board. Even though it does not look like my old one, it will do the same job as the other did, and that is to help others and fix what I can. It's good to know, though, that my dear God of Fire is always looking out for me.